This is a story about outcasts, people who are outside the concept of society. They are not included. They kind of not even excluded. They kind of like live at the margin of the sense of the system of life. And so we had to build a logical, in the sense of the emotional logic of things, world where you had a very great commitment to the nature of these people and the worlds through which they cross their path. And the 80s as well. My motto is, when I do period movies, is always that we need to make it as if we are making a movie in that period of time, not about that period of time. I think that, first of all, it's a novel from Camille De Angelis, and that's how Dave wrote it. But I think the idea of the wanderer, the idea of the road, the being on the road, it's so connected with America, with the certain archetypes of America, the frontier, the reinvention of self. That was so strongly American. And I also love the idea that this is something happening in a period of time, the 80s, who somehow were so optimistic. Economy was booming in the Reaganomics. Conflict was kind of sedated, and yet the country was more impoverished than ever. And the great conflicts were there. Let's think of the AIDS crisis, for instance. So I thought that the contradiction in the period was very strong about how we could visualize the internal contradictions of these characters, their quest for settlement, but at the same time the impossibility of such. It definitely is archetypical. The story is an archetypical story. Again, as I said, it's like about children being lost in the wilderness and having to find a way back home, and finding that there is no such a place as home, and have to reinvent the possibility of home, and again, not being able to do that. It's about the disenfranchised. In this sense, it's archetypical for that. And as I said before, it's very much in par with some idea of the travelogue, the American travelogue, in my opinion. And the second I started reading the script, I felt like, there is something about this thing that is very attractive to me. And the more I was reading, the more I felt this was something that I knew how to do it, and most importantly, it was unconsciously pulling me into it. And there was a third element that was very strong to me, that when Lee appears on the page, I felt that that character was, for me, certainly a great role for Timothee. And of course, me and Timothee, we had a great experience doing Call Me By Your Name. We have a strong bond, and I was experiencing the beautiful blooming of his wonderful path in cinema, his wonderful persona, and I felt like, oh my God, that could be a great opportunity. So at the end of the reading, I called Dave and said, listen, it's great, and I'm thinking that I could do it. And I said, I will do it only if Timothee does it. So Taylor, I wish she was a discovery of mine, but she is not. Like, she has been doing a lot of work, and I discovered her to I guess the movie that discovered her, which is Waves by Trey Schultz. She appears in the movie peripherically at the beginning in Waves, and then she becomes the protagonist of the third part, the third act, as they say. And she was extraordinary there. And then when I and Dave started to talk about the cast, I think we had different ideas. I'm not gonna speak for his ideas, but I knew I wanted Taylor. I said, I think Taylor is the only one who could do it. And I called her agent, who is a friend, and I said, can I talk to Taylor via Zoom? And we did that, and I found immediate connection with Taylor. And then, like, very few days later, I called her and said, the role is yours if you want it. So I didn't audition her. She got the role out of my knowledge of what she had done before and the fact that she really felt perfect for playing Maren. I think Bones and All is a film about the impossibility of love and the aim for finding home, but also in a way the impossibility of that dream of home. I think Timothee is a wonderful iconoclast. Timothee is a very bright, and he has the capacity of thinking of cinema, not just from the perspective of his own character, but in general from the perspective of what is the impact of the movie in itself. And so he has this capacity of understanding the semantics of his job as well as the performance in itself. So it's beautiful because I think Timothee loves to find the challenge, to be in a risky place like I do. So we share that for sure. Who am I? What do I want? How can I escape a sort of destiny I feel I have to carry on my shoulders? How can I find connection with someone else? How my connection with someone else is a connection because we are similar or because we are different from one another? How can I make home for myself? All these are really universal questions that are extreme questions that we can feel in our life or we can deal with in our life with different degrees of intensity and drama and extreme, a sense of extreme. Clearly in this movie, because it's a movie, we are going for the extremes because we want this universal to be very, very deep and profound. But I think, we, all of us, could definitely agree that in the search for self, we deal with a lot of extreme, complicated emotions in our life. So I hope that's the connection for an audience. It's so beautiful for me to see him growing up and really growing up as a performer. I think he is so heartbreaking. And I think everybody's heartbreaking in the movie. Timothee in particular, though, brings a sense of insecurity and of tenderness and of impossibility that are so strong. Mark Rylance is possibly one of the greatest actors alive now, and to work with him has always been something that I really wanted to. And when I and he spoke on Zoom again, the old days of meeting actors were gone then. Maybe they're coming back now, in person, I mean. But the conversation was very, very interesting because I think that Mark understood that we didn't want to make in Sully a sort of bidimensional portrait of a villain. We wanted to make, as for the rest of the characters in the movie, a three-dimensional portrait of a man who has been continuously living alone, and he's in search of a contact and a companionship. That's what we felt was important for the character. And to see Mark bringing his incredible technique and his total commitment to the character was extraordinary. I thought that was great to have proper composers to work on the soundtrack. So I went into the rockstar world again with Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, but still they are some of the most important and wonderful composers some can think in cinema composition. And the experience was amazing. We met on the phone before shooting, and I gave them a little impulse. I said, listen, because I want this to be a very deep Americana, can we think of the sound of Americana for a moment? And guitar came to mind. And I started to think of the idea of a simple articulation of a melody coming from being with your guitar by the fire in the wilderness. And that's how this very beautiful, endearing score came about, started from that. And Trent and Atticus composed this beautiful lyric, beautifully loving themes with guitar, and then they embody that with a sort of wall of sounds that were really deep and went very dark. So the mixture of these two things is really beautiful, and it was wonderful to work with them. They're so smart and they're so for it. They go for things, and sometimes we were challenging one another, saying like, why don't we go and let's say in a moment we go opposite to what you think you should go. So when Lee confesses something very dramatic, the music is super sweet and very, very full of love, because we are now in the position of listening to his storyline. And so we have to be open to him. We cannot be closed. Like when it's in a way, the moral position of the movie lies a lot into the music of Trent and Atticus.